Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Day Mystic Show. Our mission here is to help you turn whatever you desire into real-life manifestations by sharing our revolutionary technology to make that happen for you. We bring you such cutting-edge information through our resident wizard, Peter Schenk, and also through such magical guests each week that are really making a difference to improve our lives on a variety of levels. I'm your co-host, Donna, along with the founder of this program, himself, the modern day mystic, Peter Schenk. Peter, how are
Donna,
you?
how are you? I'm doing great. Hello, everyone. So we have an amazing guest tonight, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But with that said, there's a lot of things happening in our world, and one is the HFA minis are almost gone, folks. There won't be another production run until May 2017, and the HFA, A New Way to Travel, there's still a few left there as well. Those we won't get back until August. And I know a lot of you are waiting for the HFA Plus. Unfortunately, they are having a lot of manufacturing problems with it. It's very hard to produce it, but I've been told that we should have ample quality in by the March timeframe. And around that time, we have the Q Shield for animals coming in based on the mini technology, except it's a radically different design, although it houses the same case. And of course, you can use this for any of your animals. And we're going to have, at some point in the March timeframe, we're going to have a woman that talks to animals and is psychic with them. So we're definitely going to be getting her a few of these to beta test, and that's coming. And of course, the intention bracelet is now becoming a reality. Folks, you have no idea what you're in for. This thing is unlike anything you have ever seen. It's going to be immensely powerful and absolutely stunningly beautiful. Donna, tell us about the 30-day challenge, please.
You bet. So the 30-day challenge, I'm going to ask you. Fabulous. There we go. So the 30-day challenge, folks, for those of you who are doing this with all of us, the 30-day challenge is this amazing program. It is free. Folks, I hope you're taking advantage of it. We have 7 professionals all talking about the spirit, the body, and the mind. And you get a daily video of everything that these experts are bringing to the table. And of course, it's free. I do see some folks in the chat. I see Suki is out there, and Joy and Georgia. Folks are in the chat. You can ask them as well how they're doing on the 30-day challenge. It is a challenge, folks. So the challenge is, of course, to stay focused. At the end, Peter has also talked about once we complete, and we are on the honor system. So once we complete the 30-day challenge, there are going to be some fabulous prizes to those who make some significant changes in their lives and from the 30-day challenge. So you can still jump in there. All the videos are listed on the daily emails. You do have to go to the website and sign up so you can get all those.
So I just wanted to interject one more thing, folks. We are running a special on the HFA New Way to Travel. It's 10% off and free shipping anywhere in the continental U.S., Hawaii, or Alaska. And then there's a $20 flat shipping fee, priority USPS anywhere else in the world. Donna, tell us about our guest tonight, please.
You bet. So we've got Mark Anthony. Mark, of course, he's the psychic lawyer and also the psychic explorer. Mark is the author of the award-winning international bestseller, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. He is a world-renowned 4th-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. Mark is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. In England, he expanded his gifts and studied mediumship at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College for the Advancement of Psychic Science. Mark is regularly featured on nationwide television, major talk shows and radio shows, print media as a psychic medium, paranormal expert, and legal analyst in high-profile cases. An accomplished and humorous and spellbinding public speaker, Mark is a headliner at conventions, expos, and spiritual organizations such as the Edgar Cayce ARE, the Sedona Spirit Symposium, and universities including Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. So welcome, of course, Mark, to the MDM show.
Mark, how are you, sir? That was quite an introduction. I mean, that was like literally like 3 minutes of titles and things you've accomplished. Mine's like 3 sentences, modern day mystic, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, here we go. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Peter. It's great to be here. Thank you, Donna, for having me on the show.
So you're a lawyer and you're a medium. Those are like bipolar. How does that happen?
Well, I was born this way as a psychic medium because both my parents had these abilities as well, Peter. And I started doing research and I found that it's on both sides of the family going back generations. And then when my parents met, it was my dad just got out of the Navy and he met my mom at this dance and they started talking and he said, "There's something different about you." And she said, "Well, there's something I have to tell you." And they both discovered that night that they could both see and communicate with spirits. So this is a recessive trait that runs in my family. And then they had me. So when two parents have the same recessive trait, the likelihood of one of their children having that ability increases. And then as I got older, I decided that I wanted to go to law school. And that's how I became the psychic lawyer in the Cliff Notes version.
But isn't that almost like cheating, though? I mean, so you're in court, you're battling over who knows what, and you're reading their minds, and the spirits are telling you, he's lying, she's guilty, he's guilty. How does that work?
Well, first off, I don't read minds, okay? I communicate with spirits, and it's not a constant texting and instant messaging. So there's a lot going on in a courtroom, which is very distracting. You have a panicky client, talking to you. You have opposing counsel. You have a judge that usually doesn't understand the case. You've got witnesses. Generally the judges know what's going on. But there's a lot going on that doesn't lend itself to opening up to the sensitivity required for communication with the other side. That being said, I can pick up on energy about people. And in jury selection, I'm usually pretty good at realizing who's being open with me and who's not. But as far as it being an unfair advantage, everybody has a skill set. This is part of mine. I know other people that have skill sets that they use to their benefit as well. And when clients found out that I was a psychic medium, they couldn't wait to hire me.
So how did your work as a lawyer get you interested in understanding brain function and the nature of consciousness?
Well, what happened, Peter, is that I originally started off as a prosecutor, then I went into criminal defense, and from there my practice expanded into personal injury, and I started specializing in head injury litigation, and I began to learn about the human brain. And then I started working in earnest with my mediumship, and I started to see that there were parts of the brain that are directly related to one's ability to perceive spirits. So the nice thing about law is it puts you in everything. In other words, if I have a head injury case, I have to learn about the human brain. I have to work with brain neurologists, neurobiologists. If you have a case involving a boating accident, you have to consult with admiralty experts and construction experts in a premises liability case. So I always found that very intellectually stimulating and challenging, but I particularly enjoyed neurology and the study of the human brain, which we're just beginning to understand.
So you've indicated that evidence of eternity brings spirit communication into the 21st century. How does it do that?
Well, that's my current book. Donna asked me to bring it. Evidence of eternity is my latest book. My first book, Never Letting Go, is a guide on the journey through grief, and it's been recommended by hospices and grief counselors all over the world. And what happened, Peter, is when I was on the Never Letting Go speaking tour, people kept asking me questions about, well, is there a scientific basis for this? And how is reincarnation possible? Does God exist? Does hell exist? Do animals have souls? So I started compiling the questions, and I've been doing research for years. And what I did with Evidence of Eternity is I wrote a book that redefines mediumship, because a lot of the terminology and understanding of spirit communication is anchored in the age of spiritualism. In other words, the mid-19th century. So I brought it into the 21st century using new terminology and concepts based on things that you're doing with quantum physics and quantum energy. And so it explains spirit communication in the afterlife in terms of science, theoretical physics, human physiology, and evidence.
See, I communicate with spirit very differently. I see physically. So, back in the summer of 2004, I had a wake-up experience. And if you can imagine seeing the whole world in black and white, and then at the speed of thought, you see everything in 1080p high definition color, that does some things to your head. And all of a sudden, spirits, octaves, frequency, whatever you want to call them, are walking around. And back in those early years, I put my attention on them, and they all want to play with me nonstop. So over time, I've learned that if I don't put my attention on them, they just go about doing what they're doing. And but I've also spent a lot of time over the last 12 years on the edge of the consciousness grid in what I call the rabbit hole. Some people call it the Akashic Records. There's a lot of names for it, but it's a place where it's really that great quantum database where all information, past, present, and future exists simultaneously.
Right.
And, there's so much bullshit out there about you don't have access, you can't get to it. I'm like, really? Everyone has access to it. You just have to ask. And then,
Well, that's, it's funny. And I know that your show isn't religious. I don't want to get off on that, but that's where the paranormal or let's call it the metaphysical field, which is what you and I are engaged in. It's like with a lot of fundamentalist religions, and it doesn't matter what religion it is. When you tell people, well, you can't get access to God unless it's through our clerics, our book, and by the way, you need to give us at least 10% of your income, and then maybe you'll connect with God. And so you get a lot of people in the metaphysical realm saying that, well, you can't do this or you can't do that. The fact of the matter is nothing spiritual is controlling. And we all have the same physical apparatus and the capability of having these experiences. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody is a medium, but everyone is capable of a mediumistic experience. It's like we can all swim, but we can't all necessarily be Michael Phelps. Some people are better at these things than others. Some people are better mathematicians, others are better artists, others are better, musicians, what have you. So, but we all have the ability to connect.
So the human body is born with 5 innate senses that we use to navigate reality, right?
That's correct.
In my research and understanding of what I do, the human body actually has 250 senses, of which a lot of people around the world are waking up to now. Mine, prior to my wake-up experience, I didn't know the world existed the way it did. If you would have asked me about the new age, kumbaya, crystals, pretty waterfalls, I'd be like, really? You know what I mean? And now it's not so much but it's more like a little bit of a pushback. But, what was activated in me was this massive push to help humanity. I had this analytical mind, and then all of a sudden this, metaphysical mind started growing. And I was very successful at merging the two using ancient wisdom and state-of-the-art technology, to bring amazing products that the world has just never seen before. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I just brought it into a modern day context using, this ancient knowledge that I was given and continually to be given. I mean, if you look at the HFA, You know, it looks like an ancient piece of technology with state-of-the-art metallurgy, but yet it has a futuristic design. So, I mean, you know, the balance of all of it is just, you know, in the now and in the moment. So let's shift gears. Albert Einstein once said, "We're all light beings." That statement seems to be more spiritual than scientific. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, well, Einstein's one of my favorite people of all time. And when I was visiting Princeton University, and I don't think I should say this on a show, but it's been a while, so perhaps the statute of limitations is run. I sneaked into the classroom where Albert Einstein used to teach. I didn't touch anything or do anything. I just had to be there. And it was just like, it was like when I went to Abbey Road Studios, you know, like where the Beatles recorded. It was like, oh my God, this is like where, you know, a lot of it happened. And Einstein was a man of great, obviously great intellect, a genius, very few people in his league. And what he said was spiritual, that we're all light beings. And he said that there's no matter. We've got that all wrong. There's only energy which vibrates at different frequencies so as to be perceptible to the senses. And so, Peter, what we're finding is that life cannot exist without light. I mean, clearly, if Earth was not exposed to sunlight, then it would be nothing more than a frozen chunk of rock, or, you know, wandering aimlessly through space. But everything that we eat is dependent upon light, whether it's animals that eat plants or the plants themselves. And that without light, people fall into horrible depressions. They'll even die without the vitamin D from it. But what we found on a cellular level is that cells communicate using low-level frequency light known as biophotons. And scientists have wondered for years, like if you drop something on your foot and immediately you feel it, it's moving at light speed. And now they found that our cells are a matrix of light, which flash information to and fro. And so it has been determined that one individual cell can emit 100,000 flashes of light in a minute. And we also know that light contains information and energy. So while light comes to us from a physical source like the sun, we too also emanate light. Now, I know that you're very well aware of this because of your enlightenment and the understanding with the Akashic records and the exposure to frequency. For people who have spiritual experiences and they talk about being enlightened or they perceive the light, and the light has been a means for humans to describe the spiritual energy of God. So we have light in the spiritual sense, we have light in the physical sense, and we have light in the physiological sense.
And then we have people that say, I'm enlightened. And then, of course, I have to laugh at them. Why? Because I asked them, why are you enlightened? Well, I've reached a state of simplicity where I can tell other people what to do. I'm like, really? Really? And this gets me all fired up. And I did a bunch of videos around this. So the whole enlightenment thing, sorry getting off on a tangent, but it really strikes a sore chord with me.
Well, a lot of people go around, it's like, oh, I'm so super good and I'm so super wonderful and I'm so enlightened. Enlightenment means an understanding. It's a knowledge of. That's why they refer to the period of history as the Enlightenment, because you're coming out of the medieval era, then the Renaissance, and then you're getting into an era where science began to explain and define things that were heretofore mysteries. And so enlightenment is an ongoing process. Now, can we be enlightened? Yes, but just because you understand something doesn't mean that's the be all and the end all. It's an ongoing process. But, you know, I meet people. It's funny. I was on Twitter one time, and there was somebody that wanted me to follow them. And I looked at her bio. She goes, "I am a light being that is here. That is a ray of joy." And it's like, okay, so all I'm hearing is me, me, me. I'm hearing this narcissistic drone. And the fact of the matter is, as Einstein said, we're all light beings, and God is light. the light is pure and cannot be polluted, but it sure can be blocked. And a big part of that is me.
So let me ask you a question. We know that light exists. We also know that dark exists. Now, I personally don't believe in good versus evil, light versus dark. I believe in levels of vibration. The further something out from source, the lower it vibrates. In human form, it might be something evil. But we know the light can always exist without the darkness. Can the darkness exist without the light?
Okay.
I'm asking you.
Well, I think you can't really have one without the other, because you can't see the light but for the dark, and you can't realize that there's dark but for the light. And it, gets into the balance in the universe, the yin yang. There's positive energy, there's negative energy. We know that from the study of electricity. So, a lot of, and I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in the devil. I mean, I was raised Catholic. They're really into the hell and the devil and all of that. But I do believe in, like you indicated, frequencies. And the way I like to explain the other side is in terms of frequency. We are corporeal beings, but we are energy beings. And as Einstein said, we're vibrating at a lower frequency. So let's call us AM radio, and the other side's FM radio. And we're two systems which run parallel to each other. And within both of those systems, there's a multitude of frequencies from the low band to the high band. And there may not be a hell, but there may be lower frequencies, but it's not a static condition either. And then when you start studying frequency, you realize in the electromagnetic spectrum, there's gamma rays, X-rays, XM rays, ultraviolet. I mean, there is such a huge multitude of frequencies that what we're able to perceive is such a very small part of it. So I don't worry about there being a hell, or even for that matter, a heaven, because I know that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears again. Tell me about the pineal gland. And, how does the pineal gland affect the ability to perceive spirits? Because there's a lot of people out there selling all different types of concoctions, whatever they are, that says this will open up your pineal gland and you'll be able to talk to God. Really?
Yeah, if you want to talk to God, just talk to God.
Thank you. There it is.
Well, it's, because God, we're all energy and we're all energetically interconnected. But in the center of the forehead, about 4 inches behind the center of the forehead, is the pineal gland, which is a small pea-sized gland in the brain. And what's fascinating, Peter, is in yoga, this is known as the third eye chakra. So the Hindus were aware that this part of the head, this part of the brain, had something to do with spirituality and the ability to communicate with higher frequencies. Studies in the last 30 years conducted in the US, Europe, and Israel, and a couple other places, I think Japan as well, found that inside the pineal gland, there are calcite and magnetite crystals. So we know that the brain has an electrical field. I refer to the spirit or the soul as a quantum field. So we have electricity flowing through the brain, and you have an organ there that regulates brainwave frequency, our circadian rhythms, when we eat, when we sleep, secretes the hormone melatonin, and also regulates our ability to change brainwave frequency. In other words, we have a radio transmitter and a receiver in our head. And it appears from studies that the focal point of spiritual or psychic activity, if you will, in the human body focuses primarily on the pineal gland. So that is what happens. It's a lot of people. And Peter, I mean, I don't even have to ask you this, but I could ask Donna this too. Donna, have you ever had a dream where a deceased loved one came and talked to you and it seemed very realistic?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you consider yourself a medium?
No.
Let's see, you had a mediumistic experience, particularly if that sleep experience felt real. It had it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when you woke up, you were like, oh my gosh, that was real. Well, what's happening there is when we go from the beta state, which is the awake and conscious state that we're all hopefully in right now, but we're in right now, and we go to sleep, you go from beta to alpha to theta. On the alpha theta border, your brainwave frequency surges, and spirits can see that, so they bring their frequency down. You get a frequency match, and that's what happened to you. That's what happens to pretty much everybody who has a contact experience in the sleep state. It's different than a dream. You know, dreams are like, you know, a car pulls up and turns into a circus and then starts, you know, distributing pizza or something weird, you know, that surrealistic, bizarre nature of dreams. But a contact experience is real, feels real, and is extremely coherent. So what happens with mediums, and this is what scientists aren't quite sure how or why this happens, we can do this in the conscious state. So what's happening is we're going from beta to the alpha theta state within seconds, when it normally takes hours during the sleep state.
But that's easy.
Get to that
You
point.
can just match the frequency and boom, it's information on demand.
Yes.
I mean, you know, it's as easy as breathing or tying your shoes. Once you know how to do it, you don't actually learn how to do it. You just do it. It's amazing.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Peter, when you're saying we just do it, but you know, when you say we just do it, that, you know, it sounds easy, but
no, it's like an experience that you've had. You cannot explain the experience. The only way to have that experience is to experience it yourself, right? So that comment was directed directly at Mark, you know. So prior to my wake up experience, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know the world existed the way it did. The next second, you know, there's dead people walking around me. I was doing a slideshow presentation at work, and an alien dropped onto the table, looked at me, and walked through the wall. I'm like, really? You know, I'm 36, 37 years old at the time. The white picket fence, the house, the ex-wife, you know, the kids, and I'm trying to hold it all together. But Mark, I'll be very honest with you. The one thing that did keep my sanity together was absolutely knowing that I was better off where I was now than where I came from. Because if life was about Alice in Wonderland, you know, an acid trip that's truly just never ends, it's awesome, man.
You know, Peter, you brought up an interesting point. When the spiritual door opens, there really is no going back, nor should there be. That would be like saying, well, I really need to go back to high school. You know?
What?
Yeah. Who would want to do that? Who would want to do that? And it is, you know, for me, around age 4, I started seeing dead people. And I started talking about it to my parents, and they were cool about it. They said, just don't talk about it outside of the family. And the other day I had a really nice couple come to see me for an in-person reading. And they're concerned because their 14-year-old son keeps getting visitations from dead relatives, and it's scaring him. And so I explained to them that, you know, he's obviously a medium and it's a gift, but tell him just to talk about it to the two of you. And they were very good about that, because it's hard enough being a teenager, but when you're a weird teenager, one that sees dead people, you know, you're going to become a freak, a party favor, and of course get bullied and picked on. Also, mediums tend to be, you know, very sensitive people emotionally. Being a sensitive boy is not usually a prized thing, you know. So explaining that to them, it brought them a lot of comfort. I was fortunate because my parents were like, Mark, this is fine, but just talk about it as much as you want to us, because people outside of our family won't understand. And as I got older, I started to see that they were absolutely correct.
Oh, without a doubt. So how does the study of light, you know, relate to spirituality, the scientific study of light?
What we're finding is that, when I say we, I mean the scientific community, is that everything, okay, in physics, we all know that everything's composed of molecules. Molecules are composed of atoms. Atoms are composed of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And on a subatomic level, all those are composed of quanta, which is an electromagnetic particle, henceforth the term quantum physics. Everything is. You, me, the microphone that I'm speaking into, the air we're breathing, the space between the earth and the sun itself, everything that is known to exist is electromagnetic energy. And, you know, people think of God as a white guy sitting on a throne with a scepter who's real neurotic and insecure and jealous and smiting people for not tithing 10%. And all I can say is, no, that's actually a Michelangelo painting. That's not God. And that God is this energy. And you've had people from Buddha through Krishna, Jesus, talk about the kingdom of God is within. St. Teresa of Avila talk about the 7 mansions, which correspond with the chakras. Gandhi talking about this. You got Einstein, and now you're having quantum physicists all over the world saying, in fact, recently Dr. Michio Kaku, who's the string theorist, said that there's not just a universe, but multiverses, said that eternal life is not inconsistent with the laws of physics. Nikola Tesla said this. So God, in my belief, is this energy. We're all energy. We're all interconnected. I tend to believe that there is a central intelligence or an information which flows through all of it, which would henceforth be God, as opposed to an insecure white guy sitting on a throne with a scepter.
So you can make the statement, I am God, and it's complete truth.
Absolutely. And we're all cells or quanta in the body of God.
That's pretty cool. So what are biophotons?
Biophotons, I touched on those earlier. That's the cells in our body that emit flashes of light, which is really fascinating because some biblical scholars believe that when Jesus was talking about the kingdom of God is within, okay, and then Buddha was talking about the inner light, the Hindus talk about the inner light, that they may not have had the scientific terms or even the scientific understanding that we do now, but they were right, because our cells emit light. So if God is energy and light, and we emit and our own body produces light, then the light that is God is within us, and the light that is God is without. So it's energy flows within us, without us, and around us. And so biophotons are the cells in our body, and not just us, animals, plants, all basic organisms, all organisms use biophotons, flashes of light, to communicate with each other on a cellular level. It's just really fascinating stuff to see that in the bigger scheme of things, Peter, we're all more alike than we are different.
So after my wake-up experience, you know, I was impulsed to create something to help people on a much larger scale. And I started studying everything about quantum. Okay, yes. Quantum, the buzzword. And I have an engineering background, and, you know, quark theory, string theory. I mean, at least for me, once you move past all the scientific mumbo jumbo that really doesn't make any sense to, you know, people like us, it just boils down to, if you believe that everything's made up of energy, that energy is all interconnected, that great field there is the quantum database. So, you know, people in the paranormal field like to throw around the buzz term, quantum physics. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's what we were talking about before, and I hear that a lot. You know, I hear a lot of the new age types. Oh, quantum this, quantum that.
No. You know what I love when we're talking to somebody or whoever, and they're like, "We're all ascending to the you know, the 5th dimension, the 7th dimension." I'm like, really? What does that mean? What does that mean?
I keep feeling I'm going to materialize in the transporter room of the Enterprise.
Spock is waiting to beam us up.
Long and prosper.
Rest in peace, Spock.
But what happens is, when you start studying quantum physics, I remember one day I was ready to just pull my hair out, and then I ran across a quote from the great physicist Heisenberg, and he said, "When you think you understand quantum physics, you don't." And it really made me feel so much better, because it can drive you to distraction, how utterly complex it is. But then on the other hand, wow, we're all energy. And Einstein was right. Einstein being one of the founding fathers, if you will, of quantum and particle physics, quantum being particle, is that we're all energy. Everything's energy that vibrates at different frequencies. And so in the spiritual sense, when you start getting people like Professor Hans-Peter Dor from the Max Planck Institute in Munich, okay, when you get German physicists on board, you got something there. And he said that the quantum field in the brain is like the data on the hard drive of a computer. And when the hard drive ceases to function, that data merely gets transferred. And in this way, we're immortal. So I find it very comforting. And he's just one of several physicists who are now coming out of the spiritual closet, if you will, because Well, Peter, and you've seen this, you're an engineer, okay, science is in one camp, faith is in the other, but now we're starting to see that there's similarities between the two. And the good thing is, it's funny, we're trying to avoid a religious discussion, but there are always going to be fanatics on both ends. The fanatics who believe in the religion of nothing, and the fanatics who are mired in mythology. But when you start seeing people of faith dropping the mythology and this is etched in stone, and beginning to be open to the validation that science is providing, and the scientific community realizing that the afterlife is based on the laws of physics, because when we die, the energy that is our soul, that quantum field, is merely transferred to a different frequency. So we're saying the same thing. You can call it heaven, or you can call it a different frequency, but we're all saying the same thing.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, Donna, did you want to ask something?
No, I was just agreeing. I'm just like, yes.
You should be on mute. No.
Well, it's funny because, normally when I go on shows and I say I'm a psychic medium and I talk to discarnate intelligence, to spirits, you get the cynics. Oh, you're a fraud, you're a charlatan, you're a phony, you're a cold reader. And then you get the religious fanatics. You're doing the work of the devil, so saith the book of, whatever. And I've studied the Bible extensively. So, I can, I get into quotes with them, but I try not to do that. But the fact of the matter is that God exists in spite of religion, not because of it. And that now we're studying the afterlife in terms of energy, and it appears, according to Michio Kaku and others, eternal life is not inconsistent with the laws of physics. Nikola Tesla said, what one man calls God, the other calls the laws of physics. And it's really nice to see validation. So I go on shows and I start talking about scientific proof for the soul, and instead of getting all the hate emails, I'm starting to get, wow, thank you for validating my belief system. Thank you for making me feel better. And it's like, well, you're welcome, but all I'm doing is putting the facts together and presenting them.
I want to talk about Edward Casey.
I'm sorry?
Edward Casey.
Edgar Casey
was way ahead of his time.
Yes.
Tell us about him.
Edgar Casey is one of the most fascinating psychics who've ever lived. There's three basic types of psychics, of mediums. There are mental mediums, of which I am, which means that a spirit transmits information to me, and that frequency goes into my brain and gets translated into recognizable and understandable concepts. Then there's physical mediums, and I've yet to see one that actually persuades me, although I understand they're out there, who can, a physical medium projects ectoplasm, a substance from their body, which forms an image of the person who is communicating. But Edgar Casey falls into the third category. In the United States, we refer to them as channelers. in Britain as trance mediums. He would go into a trance, and then spirits would overlay their energy on him and speak through him. He came up, or rather, he was the channel for countless cures, medical innovations, and then also amazing bits of information and prophecy. And he was drawn to Virginia Beach, and the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment headquarters is in Virginia Beach. In fact, I'll be speaking there at the Reincarnation Summit this May. And there's branches of Edgar Cayce all over the world. They called him the sleeping prophet, and he died in the late 1940s. And thankfully, his work continues on. I understand his grandson just passed within the last year. It was very sad to everybody who admires Edgar Cayce. But he was a tremendous individual. And one of the things that he said, or rather the spirits that communicated through him, is that God is energy, similar to electricity. And it's funny because the message was not that God is an electrical light or a machine, but the same creative power and energy that is electricity. And now we're seeing from quantum physicists that the electromagnetic energy at its most basic unit, the quanta, is indeed the basis of everything which exists. So Cayce was definitely ahead of his time. But then again, isn't the truth always?
So I have a question for you. Edward Cayce made a prediction that the Great Lakes would flow into the Mississippi and divide the United States. So as a medium, do you have access to a prediction like that type of information?
Do I?
Yeah.
I've received precognitive messages in Evidence of Eternity. Sorry, don't mean, but the first chapter, I was in New York City in May of 2001, and I was with my cousin and my niece and nephew, and they wanted to go up in the World Trade Center. And all of a sudden, I saw all this falling debris, and I hunched over and I said, "Oh my God!" And everyone's looking at me like, "What's his problem?" And I refused to go into the World Trade Center. I said, something bad's going to happen, and if it happens, you're trapped. Sadly enough, 4 months later was 9/11, and I do receive precognitive information in front of a group setting last year. I kept getting Paris. And I said, does Paris make sense to anybody? And none of the people in the audience said it did. And within a few days was the Paris massacre. And I had a similar situation. I was on tour, speaking tour in Sedona, Arizona, and I kept getting Orlando. A couple hours later, the Pulse nightclub massacre happened. And so I'm picking up on these things, but unfortunately with precognition, it's not like you're watching CNN and you get to crawl across the bottom that says, "Oh, giant tsunami coming at 10:47, Pacific time." It would be convenient if that happened. But what I think is going on here, Peter, is that these events are set in motion, and because everything is a vibration and a frequency, the denser, heavier vibrations. It's like I used to play guitar, and the low E string, which is on the top, has that very heavy vibration, and you can feel it because it resonates, and it's really, you can feel it at your core. What you and I would consider to be negative events, like a terror attack and a mass, slaughter or an earthquake, that information, that vibration is coming to us. We're picking up on it. That's why a lot of psychics whose specialization is seeing future events or anticipating future events tend to be negative, as opposed to the high frequencies would be the high E string on a guitar. It was like, and it's more subtle, and it requires a more fine-tuned sensitivity to be aware of it. And I think that's why people who have precognitive ability tend to to pick up on negative events.
Thank you for that. Interesting. So, Mark, are you okay if we do some questions from the audience?
Sure.
Donna?
Thanks, Peter. So, Linda wants to know, Mark, can you please explain ghosts? Are they spirits who are trapped on the earth plane?
I love that question. There's three schools of thought as to what a ghost is. One, that it's a spirit trapped on the earth plane. Secondly, that it's a spirit who bounces back and forth between the other side and our side. And three, that it's a residual energy echo. Let's take them all three. Number one, spirits trapped in this world. I depart with a lot of my colleagues in the paranormal field. I don't believe that, because my experience is that when a person physically dies, your consciousness, your quantum field, your soul is like a drop of water that separates from the body and plunges into the eternity, which is the other side, because the other side is a collective consciousness. So you cannot hold somebody here by grieving. They are not trapped walking around like Ichabod Crane with your head in one hand and a lantern in the other, or whatever the imagery is. I think that's a lot of outmoded thinking. Number two, I think is the more accurate description is a spirit will bounce back and forth from the FM radio of the other side to the AM radio of the material world, because for various reasons they like to visit and see people or places that they felt they had some attachment to here, but they're in no way stuck here. And then number three, the residual energy echo, I find a lot of credibility in. Matter retains energy. So if you go to a place and there's the spirit walking around holding the head in one hand and the pumpkin in the other, or whatever, that is no more a sentient spirit than your reflection in a mirror is you. It's a residual energy echo, which is like bouncing around and around and around. And so that the people that do house clearings, you can interrupt that energy, deflect it, and quote unquote exorcise the ghost. So those are the three different schools of thought on what a haunting or what a ghost is.
Nice. So Gabrielle wants to know, can you tell if someone is actually seeing or hearing on psychic level, or they are experiencing these things due to mental illness?
If you start hearing voices that say take axe and go kill your lawyer, that's mental illness. If they're bringing you messages of love, healing, resolution, and it makes you feel good, that's a spiritual connection.
Nice. I like that. Okay. Karen is saying, is there a small channeling to the group? I'm not quite sure what she's saying there. Is there a small channeling to the group? Does that make sense to you?
No.
Okay, me either. All right.
I think what she may be asking is like, is there a message for the group? So I'll say yes. Make sure you watch this show every week.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday. 8 p.m. Eastern, which would be 7 Central, 6 Mountain, and 5 Pacific.
Oh, we love
I love that spiritual interpretation of that question.
Me too. Karen,
Arizona bounces back and forth between time. So
Karen,
Arizona is one of those, is it this side or the other side?
Exactly. Karen, feel free to clarify that. But Suzanne is saying, so you don't believe in any dark energies that actively seek to influence this side?
Why would you say that?
No, I don't. I think that a lot, and Suzanne, just forgive me,
We're having fun, Suzanne.
Yeah. Well, what happens is a lot of times people are afraid of the unknown. And for centuries, spirit communication has been looked at as a dark and evil thing. And it's so funny because I go on paranormal investigations, and a lot of the paranormal investigators, they want it to be evil, they want it to be demonic, It's like all these shows, they jump around with the night vision goggles, demon. I don't watch it, and I don't say anything. And I go on these paranormal investigations, and you'll walk into a room or you'll encounter a spirit and people start screaming, "Oh my God, it's evil," because they start getting cold chills and tingles. And what that is a spirit is a quantum field, is an energetic entity, and their electrical field is interfacing with yours. Like you hear about auras, we all have auras. Well, a light bulb has an aura because that is the emanation of energy around the power source. We produce light and heat, and we have an electrical field, ergo we have an aura. And when a spirit wants to communicate with us, they're a form of electromagnetic energy. Their energetic field is interconnecting with ours. We are then getting a neurological tingling response, which is the same physiological reaction of the flight or fight response. So ergo, we immediately assume that it's negative and evil. And I've been part of many investigations where quote unquote evil entities, once you start communicating with them, they're not evil at all. In fact, a number of them have said, "Why is everyone so afraid of me?" And so I don't believe in a central command of evil like a James Bond villain going, it's like these religions that create a demonic creature. In other words, a dark entity that God will fight with for eons and then eventually vanquish. Actually, what that is Norse mythology, which influenced the Roman Empire, and through the Romans, it became integrated into Christian and Western belief systems. And the Muslims, like Christians, love hell, so they were happy to incorporate that.
Wow. Okay. So you've got another question. Skip, we're not doing political questions. So I'm gonna redo your question, Skip. Dark energies. I mean, the dark energies now. Is there anything that we can do to keep our vibration up?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And as Buddha said, do not do to others what you do not want them to do to you. It comes down to what every great spiritual teacher, be it Krishna, Buddha, Moses, Jesus, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Billy Graham, the Native Americans, all religions can be summed up in 2 words: be nice.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Suzanne wants to know, let's see. Okay. Suzanne says, I don't really believe in evil either until my current very known spiritual teacher has been teaching that they become visible as we awaken. Thoughts on that?
They don't. No. Here's the thing, though. There's a lot of non-human spiritual intelligence on the other side. And I know this can sound goofy because when I first started studying, I'm like, yeah, you can call them sprites or pixies or fairies or whatever. You can put whatever label you want on it. But I started seeing in my travels around the world that there are non-human entities. I was in England and they said there's this one patch of woods where there was a fairy. And I went out there with a couple other mediums and I was like, whoa, there was something there. Then I've been in paranormal investigations at Estes Park at the Stanley Hotel, picked up on elementals, energies that are aligned with the earth. When I was in Japan, the Shinto religion is based on the kami, K-A-M-I, that are spirits that are all over the place. And I started realizing these are the same types of energies, just being given different names because of the different cultures. And they're not necessarily evil, they're non-human, and they're not entirely interested in us. So you may perceive them and think, oh, well, it's evil, because believe it or not everything in the universe is about us.
It's not? It's not about me, I. Really? Oh my gosh. Mark, we are at the end of our time together. So could you please let the crowd know how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. Please visit my website, evidenceofeternity.com. Those of you who are listening have subscribed to Peter's YouTube channel. please go on my website, join my YouTube channel, sign up for my newsletter. I've got a lot of great events coming up at the Unity of Naples on February 10th here in Florida. Then at Aquarian Dreams in the Melbourne, Florida area on February 18th. Then I'm off to Houston, February 24th and 25th. Then I'll be in Fort Lauderdale at the Center for Inner Wisdom on Saturday, March 4th. And there's a lot other events that I've got all over the country. And if you go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, sign up for my newsletter, check out the calendar of events. You can find out about my books, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. And, you know, Peter, I've had so much fun. I hope I get the privilege of coming back. You and Donna are just a pleasure to work with. And let me tell you, all the folks that put questions in the chat room, thank you for doing that. It's challenging, it's engaging, and it's great to have the audience participate on that level. So thank each and every one of you.
Thank you, Mark.
And can they also on your website, can they sign up for like private readings? I see there's some folks who have some questions about loved ones. Can they just come to you directly?
Absolutely. On my website, there's 2 pages, one for telephone readings, one for in-person readings. Telephone readings are every bit as accurate as the in-person. The in-person are fewer and far between because I'm on tour so much. And generally when I'm on tour, I don't have the time allocated for private readings because I'm doing, you know, group events in front of, you know, crowds of people. But certainly if you go to evidenceofeternity.com, you can find out about how to schedule a private session with me.
Mark, thank you very much. Awesome. This is probably one of the best ones we've had yet. Really just awesome. Nice flow to it. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.